This week, murder off campus.
There's evidence that a missing college student is a victim of foul play.
The killer took 4 lives in a matter of minutes.
48 Hours Crime Time double feature, Saturday 9/8 Central on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
This is CBS.
Stakes in this election couldn't be higher.
November 5th will be the most important day in the history of our country.
This is a CBS News special, America Decides, Campaign 24, the first presidential debate. Now reporting from CBS Election Headquarters in Times Square, Norah O'Donnell.
Good evening. The first presidential debate of the 2024 general election is just 1 hour away. This historic event between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump is the first ever matchup between a sitting president and his predecessor. And it will also be the earliest presidential debate in U.S. history and feature the 2 oldest candidates to ever face off on the debate stage. The debate, hosted by CNN, will also be the first time either candidate has been on a debate stage since 2020. If you remember, 4 years ago, these candidates held 2 unforgettable debates leading up into the election, both filled with insults, interruptions, and a lack of civility. Well, a lot has happened since Biden and Trump last met. Biden was elected president. There was an assault on our nation's capital. The Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, declaring the constitutional right to an abortion no longer exists. The wars in Ukraine and Israel. And then nearly a month ago, Trump became the first president, current or former, ever to be convicted of a felony. We've got new reporting tonight, so let's go right to our team in Atlanta. And first to Chief White House Correspondent Nancy Cordes. And Nancy, the Biden campaign, is it about like the 3 C's: choice, contrast, and character tonight?
No question, Nora. He's got a high bar in front of him because he needs to show to anyone who's watching in this audience at home, around the country, that he's got the fire in him to go another 4 years. The president arrived here in Atlanta this afternoon. He was greeted by a crowd of supporters. He did a little jog over to them. He's now at a downtown hotel with the First Lady, who arrived separately after doing an event in Virginia. She will be at the debate tonight. I was speaking to a Biden aide a short time ago. He said that the president is in a good mood. He's well prepared. And he said something interesting. He said that President Biden is not going to shy away tonight, Nora, from fact-checking Donald Trump. He fully expects that Trump will say things that are not true. And when that happens, he is going to point it out when it's his turn to speak, of course. He'll talk about why he thinks it's untrue. He's not going to dwell on it. He'll then pivot to his message, but he doesn't want to let it lie if Donald Trump says things, misrepresents his record, or says things about the state of the country that he thinks are false.
Mm-hmm. And Nancy Cordes, describe for everyone where you are right now.
I'm in the spin room. We are across the street, Nora, from where this debate is going to be taking place. Remember that this is a debate without an audience, so that room is going to be pretty empty. It's going to have the debate moderators and the 2 candidates, and so everyone else is here in the spin room. There are a number of Biden surrogates who will be here to talk to reporters, to tell us all about what a great job he has done, including California Governor Gavin Newsom and Amy Klobuchar, senator from Minnesota, and interestingly, Mary Trump, a relative of Donald Trump who has been critical of him for many years, but who is now coming out strongly in favor of Biden in one of the most public ways possible.
And that's why the dynamic will be so different inside. Nancy Cordes, thank you. Let's check in now with Chief Election and Campaign Correspondent Robert Costa. I know you've got some new reporting out of the Trump campaign. What have they been saying today?
Great to be with you, Nora, here in Atlanta. It's evident to me, talking to the Trump campaign, that they want their candidate to stay cool tonight. They know that President Biden is likely going to be on the attack. So they're advising him behind the scenes. They're saying, look, this is a 90-minute marathon. Keep your cool. Yes, you can defend yourself on January 6th and that criminal conviction in New York if President Biden brings it up, but turn the attention back to the economy, back to the immigration issue and border security. Talk about trade. Those are the issues they believe former President Trump will be able to put together a real victory on the electoral map come November. As for President Biden, I just keep hearing from his aides, it's not about age. It's Nancy, to build on her great reporting. It's about the economy and democracy. Look for him to try to get under former President Trump's skin, I'm told, talking about January 6th and that criminal conviction. It's interesting, though, Nora. There's a lot of spin going on here inside the so-called spin room. But I took a walk around downtown Atlanta. A lot of people feeling inflationary pain. They're feeling pain about the economy, about where their lives at this moment. Georgia's now a swing state, and the campaigns know that. With all the spin, with all the theater tonight, it comes down to kitchen table issues, how people feel in their homes.
It's an important point. The pocketbook issues always matter. Robert Costa, thank you so much. And this debate could mark a turning point in the race for president. I want to turn to Chief Political Analyst John Dickerson. And John, we've covered a lot of these debates and momentous occasions together. This is early, and the Biden team wanted an early debate.
They did. They wanted to be a choice between two candidates, not a referendum on the incumbent. When you've got a race that's this tight, anything could tip it in one way or the other. We know, tonight may end and it might not change the state of the race. But when it's this tight, you can't leave anything to chance, which is why the president has spent many days working on this campaign. Couple of things that strike me about this campaign, or this debate, I should say. We know more about these two candidates and their records under pressure than any candidates who've ever debated before. So there are not going to be any reinventions tonight. But the candidates can reframe their records in a way that might speak to voters in a new way, particularly to that question on the economy. And then you have the question of performance. Voters want to take the measure themselves with their own two eyes about the questions of age and temperament. Then finally, this question, Nora. When one candidate centers their campaign on a lie, Donald Trump saying that the election was stolen from him, how do you have a debate where the point of the debate is to measure whether candidates see things clearly and whether their solutions are not deceptive or delusional?
John Dickerson, nobody does it better than you than setting up, of course, what we'll be watching tonight and the stakes. And as John was saying, the debate, this is not going to be like one we're used to, because this is the first time in more than 35 years that a televised general election presidential debate between the two leading candidates has not been sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. It is airing on CNN and the network, and both candidates agreed to the following rules. The debate will run 90 minutes with 2 breaks. Candidates may not discuss the debate with anyone during breaks. There will be no opening statements. Each man's mic will be muted when it's not his turn to speak, and Biden and Trump get 2 minutes for answers. Rebuttals are 1 minute long, and then a response. One of the biggest changes, no audience scale, and I think that will change things, especially, I think, for Trump.
On both sides.
Yeah.
I also think it's interesting that they're going to mute the mics to see how that's going to work, because 2 minutes can be either a very long time or it can be a very short time, depending on how it's going. Yeah. We shall all see tonight. I've been excited about this all day, Nora. Have you? I've been looking forward to being here, sitting here with all of us sitting and discussing. I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm very excited.
Agreed.
You may remember back in 2020, we all remember this, the debates were full of interruptions and arguments, and the moderators had trouble reining in the candidates. One count, there were 145 interruptions on the part of Donald Trump. We'll see. A coin flip determined lectern placement and order of closing statements. The Biden campaign chose to stand the president at the right lectern. So when you're looking at your screen tonight, he'll be on the right. Trump's campaign then chose for the former president to have the final word. I was wondering about that choice, Nora, because I've always thought during a trial, you always want to be the last one to have the closing say.
Right.
Were you surprised that he made that choice?
I was
a bit.
I was, and maybe we'll find out tonight what the strategy is behind that.
I'd be curious to hear what you have to say about that, John Dickerson, later on.
Well, one of the things that at least we know about Ron Klain, who helped do debate prep, former chief of staff for Biden, did debate prep for him. One of the things they learned in the Obama years, because he helped Obama, is that impressions lock in quickly. So it's not the closing statements you want to be good and solid on. You want to be good and solid right away at the beginning for two reasons. Voters make impressions and they lock them in. Also, social media. This is going to be talked about on our coverage, but then also out in the ether. People will start sending around their impressions. You want to make the good first impression.
But does it matter if you're on the right or the left, where you're standing? Does that matter? That's what I'm hung up on.
We'll see once we see them out there. It may become obvious.
All right.
Want to bring in Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan. And what do you expect tonight will be some of the chief contrast points? Choice, reproductive rights?
That'll definitely be one of the issues that is central in this campaign, but it's one that, frankly, Joe Biden, the president, is not very comfortable discussing. He frames it typically as reproductive health care. He may lean into that language rather than the issue of abortion itself. Donald Trump has also tried to make a strategic decision to neutralize the political force behind the abortion issue and said it's an issue for states and not necessarily at the federal level. But one thing that I'm watching here is we have two commanders in chief, people with job experience standing up there. And they're going to be arguing, as Donald Trump has again and again, I'm the man to keep you out of the next war. And Joe Biden is standing up there very proud of his foreign policy record, saying I'm the guy who has kept you out of that. And I'm keeping this Western alliance together with scotch tape and duct tape at this point. But this is my chief sign. Judge me on that ability so far to navigate an incredibly complex threat environment the United States is facing at a time when the U.S. is no longer the only superpower. So when we talk about going back to the way it was, we are just facing completely new set of challenges, an incredibly full inbox for this commander-in-chief, Nora. And that's one of the things I think voters need to keep in mind as you hear discussion of all these national security issues, whether it's the border, whether it's China, something directionally they agree on, or whether it's the threat from Russia or other adversaries.
Yeah, the foreign policy, I think, will be really interesting tonight as well. Margaret Brennan, let's bring in Ed O'Keefe. You cover the White House, and you're there a lot. I mean, this is a tough moment for President Biden. That campaign, that White House, believe that he's accomplished a lot legislatively, that he's brought inflation down, even though people are still hurting. And yet, what they think, right, is that their accomplishments are not resonating with voters.
They aren't, if you look at our polling. And I thought it was interesting in the poll we released yesterday, the level of apprehension and concern and pressure on the president to perform well from Democrats tonight. Talking to them across the country, there's a lot of nervousness, anxiousness about what he needs to do. Some believe he should, quickly answer his questions and throw it back to the former president, force him to fill the time with answers that demonstrate that perhaps he's not that substantive and that many of his ideas are nutty. Others have said that, the strategy tonight, as they've been told by those that were preparing the president, is that the president plans to appeal to the American people while Trump is more likely to be focused on his base. And I think Gail's point about camera angles and whatnot, that is a huge factor here tonight. Can these two sustain themselves over 90 minutes? What do we learn later happened during those commercial breaks? Will either of them stumble either early on or later on? And remember, those first 20 minutes, and this is the case no matter the debate, those first 20 minutes really can encapsulate how this is perceived around the world and among those voters who may yet still be undecided.
Can both of them sustain 90 minutes standing? I know at one point that was a conversation. Should they stand or should they sit?
Yeah.
That will be interesting to see.
Whatever camera angle I'm at, as long as I'm next to you, I'm
Sure, Ed, sure.
It is so interesting because as we talk about all this, the candidates did prepare so differently. They are so different in many ways. So let's go back to Nancy Cordes in Atlanta. And Nancy, we haven't seen President Biden in a week. He's clearly understands the importance of this moment, and they really do want to change the trajectory of this contest.
Right. They made no bones about the fact that they were taking this seriously. He was out of sight for almost a week at Camp David with more than a dozen of his top advisors. They had a makeshift stage with podiums in an airplane hangar with his longtime lawyer, Bob Bauer, playing Trump, going on the attack, just to get comfortable with that experience. They know that there's a common fate that tends to afflict first-term presidents. When they get into that first debate, they tend to do pretty poorly, partly because they're busy, they've got a day job, they don't have that much time to prepare, but also because they get a little complacent. They say, I deal with these issues every day. Why do I need to bone up? That's certainly what happened to Barack Obama back in 2012, and he had to course correct pretty quickly. They realize that that's a common pitfall, and they didn't want to fall into it this time.
Complacent, complacent, I should say, or even cocky, because you are the commander-in-chief. That sometimes is an affliction that happens too when you're the president of the United States. Want to bring in Robert Costa. And Donald Trump, as usual, prepares very differently for these things. It's almost like he believes he was born to debate.
Nora, I had a little bit of fun here in the spin room about an hour ago. I went around to some Trump allies and advisors, and I said, well, how's debate prep going? And they, to a T, kept saying, well, former President Trump does not prep for debates. They're sensitive about it because, to your point, former President Trump likes to cast himself as someone who's a public figure for 50 years with all of his business experience going back to the 1970s, and he's not someone who likes to act like he's ever prepping, but he is prepping for this debate. He's had informal policy conversations with senators, a lot of talk about his age, but it's really about his temperament more than his positions. That's what a lot of the deliberation behind the scenes has been about.
All right, Robert Costa, thank you for your reporting as well. And coming up, our new CBS News polling will break down what voters want to hear about in tonight's debate.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That desired farm, it's a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
Good evening. The television and radio stations of the United States and their affiliated stations are proud to provide facilities for a discussion of issues in the current political campaign by the 2 major candidates for the presidency.
Look at that. That was the first ever televised presidential debate in 1960. It was hosted by CBS with moderators from all the networks and was the last time there was no audience at a presidential debate. Welcome back to CBS News. And tonight we will hear the presidential candidates discuss the direction of America and the issues that matter most. This is arguably the most important debate since that 1960 debate. And we should note also that there's been little movement in the polls between President Biden and Donald Trump. Could this debate change the trajectory? Let's bring in our polling director, Anthony Salvanto. And I know, Anthony, you have new polling out tonight. What are we learning?
I do. And one word for this race, Nora, like you said, it's close. Look, this is the national number. That's well within the margin of error. This is effectively tied. But what matters, to remind everybody, are what we call the battleground states, the closest states, the ones that will decide this. I'm going to show you a string of those. And this is just even race after even race. Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, all states Joe Biden won last time, but we're close. North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. That is your story for context, but the question is why? And what do people want tonight? So watch this. Democrats say they want Joe Biden tonight to take a more forceful tone. Why is that? Well, Ed mentioned earlier about that apprehension. Let me show you this. Among Joe Biden's supporters, their top reason for voting for Biden is, they say, to oppose Donald Trump. So I think you'll see Joe Biden tonight try to make this about Donald Trump, because he does better when people think it's a referendum on Donald Trump. But Trump, for his part, let me show you this. His advantage is that people remember the economy under him well. So take a look at this big gap. More people think they will be financially better off with Donald Trump as president than if Joe Biden wins. So you expect Donald Trump to press that advantage as well. And so what does that mean? That means Republicans tonight say they want Donald Trump to take a more polite tone. They know he's got the base, but he's got that overall edge on the economy. Final point, Nora. We asked people, could you learn anything tonight that you think could change your mind? And it's 11% who say they definitely could. That's not a big number, but it comes back to that idea of close, Nora.
Really interesting, Anthony Salvanto. Thank you so much. We've also learned from Anthony's polling the importance of abortion rights or reproductive rights. And Margaret, just today, that ruling from the Supreme Court about Idaho, which is one of 6 states in America that has a near total ban, where they've lost 20% of their OBGYNs because doctors there are concerned about being prosecuted for providing health care, essentially, to women who may be having a miscarriage. How do you see this playing out tonight on stage and as voters go to the polls?
And that brings us back to that Supreme Court decision that sent the issue back to the states. And Donald Trump is likely going to say that's where it needs to stay and try not to engage on some of the substance that you just laid out in these tough decisions that come down to, is it health care that is life-saving or not in that specific case?
And can I just say, well, I think that's interesting, too, because then shouldn't Joe Biden make the argument, oh, well, I sued Idaho to protect the rights of women and were in a dire medical situation. Would you not, Donald Trump, have challenged the state of Idaho to protect women?
And it'll be really interesting to see how much he engages on this. But Joe Biden, as president, rarely discusses the issue of abortion. And he has said, I'm just not big on it, was one of his quotes. Some of this has to do with his religious conviction. But to your point, this is something that is going to be a political force, no matter how comfortable. This is an uncomfortable topic, period, to talk about. But we know that in the midterms, abortion was a driving force in those races in a way that helped Democrats. They held on to the Senate, if you remember. And the party is hoping that when it comes to the presidential race, it'll also benefit Joe Biden, that it will drive up turnout. And we want to show you some graphics here. The majority of Americans, 60%, according to CBS polling, believe abortion should be legal in all or most cases. And in a tight race, that enthusiasm for an issue may be persuasive for a voter who otherwise might not be super enthusiastic about the candidate himself. And Democrats are looking at 11 states this fall, they're on your screen, where the issue of abortion access will literally be on the ballot as a standalone issue. and it includes battlegrounds like Arizona and Nevada. And this single issue could make a difference. Now, the Trump campaign has tried to neutralize the political force by arguing, as we were just talking about, that the Supreme Court sent it back to the states to decide on legality and that there shouldn't be a federal policy. But that frustration has frustrated some of the religious conservatives in the Republican Party who want Donald Trump to attempt a national ban or restrictions. Joe Biden's campaign has just tried to harness the political power by arguing that it was Trump who put those Supreme Court justices on that court that struck down Roe versus Wade, and that reproductive health care of all types, IVF, access to birth control, all of it's under threat if Trump is reelected. Now, that's a message, though, where you would be more likely to hear from Vice President Harris if she was on that stage. She's been delivering it for the campaign. You will perhaps hear reproductive health care from Joe Biden, but he may avoid discussing abortion directly. Now, one of the things that we also see in our polling here is that abortion access, it is important as a galvanizing force, but it ranks lower than the economy, lower than inflation, lower than the border, lower than the state of democracy, and lower than guns. So it is a galvanizing force, but it is not everything here.
I would say, Nora, being on the road in Arizona in the last few months, I've heard from liberal and Democratic activists in that state who see these polls that show Trump ahead, maybe 1 or 2 points, and they say, no, don't worry about it. We have more volunteers than we know what to do with, who are willing to work with us on knocking on doors and getting people to vote on the abortion issue specifically. They're turning in the petition ballot or the petition signatures next week to get that issue on the ballot officially. They expect it to pass overwhelmingly and to help drive support. And that in Arizona, in Nevada, to some extent in Florida, although the Biden campaign doesn't consider it a battleground, continue across the country confidence among Democrats that they will get the voters they need in a pinch over that issue.
And you often hear, though, that people will vote with their pocketbooks, which means your money and your wallet, whether you have it, whether you don't have it, everybody wants it. That's why the economy really matters. That's one of the main issues for voters. CBS News found while wage growth outpaces inflation, it does so just barely, which is partly why people say they don't feel good about this economy, despite the numbers. Senior business and technology correspondent, there she is, Jolene Kent, joins us now. Jolene, help us understand this, because the numbers show that the economy is well, but that is not how people feel. Why is that?
Yeah. Exactly. The numbers are very strong, mostly. If you take a look at what we've seen so far, if you invest in the stock market, now not everyone does, the S&P 500 is up 16% year to date. We're still sitting at these historically low unemployment numbers at about 4%. We saw the Dow closing at another 1-month high. And of course, inflation that has cooled off from its 9% peak, and we're down now at 3.3%. So overall, the numbers are strong. You've seen these hot jobs reports that we've been reporting on. And so all of the numbers seem to point to things going in the right direction, but not everyone's feeling that when you just dig a little bit deeper, Gail.
So do you think that the Biden administration needs to do a better job on its messaging? Because they certainly tell us that, but people still don't get that message.
Yeah, it's interesting. I spoke to a voter in Minnesota today, an independent voter who's really on the fence. She voted for Obama in 2008, and she voted for Trump in 2020. And she basically says for her, it comes down to how much she's paying at the grocery store, among other issues. The economy is really important. So if you take a look at our Money Watch price tracker, you can see why she's feeling that pinch. She's got 4 kids. She lives in Plymouth, Minnesota. A dozen eggs, double the price compared to pre-pandemic levels. Of course, that was when President Trump was in office. A loaf of bread up 50%, a pound of coffee up 40%. Gas, of course, you feel that, up 30%. Now, when you look back at just President Biden's term in office so far, inflation is indeed up 20%. And that's where we see, even though wage growth does outpace inflation, it's not by very much. And then if you pivot and you take a look at the housing market, overall housing prices far outpace wage growth. That's where people are feeling a lot of frustration as well. They want to buy a house, interest rates continue to be high, and you've got maybe one rate cut on the table from the Fed. We'll see.
All right, Jolene, thank you very much. And while we're at it, the cost of batteries are up, too. I was at CBS AAA batteries, they're up. It's a little annoying.
I know. We eat a lot of eggs in my house because I have 3 teenagers, so I've noticed that as well, Gil. All right. When we come back, we'll look at what lessons the candidates may have learned from that last presidential debate. Remember those debates in 2020? They were hot. You're watching CBS News.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes. Did you ever have these problems before the derailment? No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else. This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now.
You're going to pack the court?
Make sure you, in fact, let people know you're senators. I'm not going to answer the question because the question is
radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe? Who's on your list?
Gentlemen, I think
this is so unprecedented.
He's going to pack the court.
We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe.
They sure
47 years you've done nothing. They understand.
All right.
Remember that debate and all the interruptions? That was the first time that they debated. That was September 29th, 2020. Let's talk about the lessons from that debate for this rematch. John Dickerson, well, clearly the microphone is going to change things tonight, so there won't be as many interruptions.
That will change things. It's questionable about what Donald Trump learned. We know, those of us who covered the Trump
presidency is that there were often moments where his aides, his family went to him, said, you got to tone it down. You've got to be more presidential. And it would stick for very short periods of time. But his gut is something he believes in. Aides have variously talked about his times at rallies as creating a sense of giving him oxygen. He wants to be that person. That person was the one interrupting Joe Biden. The problem for Trump in that debate was that people thought, and the polling showed this, we don't want 4 more years of that in our living room. Joe Biden was there as a representative of returning to the norms of the presidency. We'll see how, and if any of those lessons conveyed to tonight.
Because people thought, oh my gosh, it's the pandemic. Life is too chaotic. I kind of like this Joe Biden. He seems more calming than Donald Trump. Those were the stylistic, at least, differences. There was a lot more, obviously, but that's what I'm saying, that debate and the chaoticness of it, I think, probably stuck with people.
And as I recall, Nora, at the time when he said, because we're all raised in houses where your parents tell you, do not tell anyone to shut up. At the time when he said shut up, I think most people actually understood why he felt that, because he was so exasperated trying to get a word in edgewise. I'd be curious to know where in the debate that moment came. I don't remember it as we sit here today.
It was about halfway through.
It was halfway through.
And even in the room, because we were up in the rafters watching this whole thing, you could just feel it in the room. Everyone was just like, oh gosh, is this what it's going to be like, when they meet again? The fact that the microphone is muted, first of all, we've all heard from people, sources, friends, family, how excited they are that they're finally implementing that rule.
Who do you think
how does
benefits?
that change? I don't know.
You don't.
And I really wonder if either of them has practiced for that phenomenon, because our friends at CNN pointed out yesterday how it's going to work. And if it goes as they say it will, you literally will see lips moving, but you will not be able to hear them. So do they practice facial expressions? Do they, scoff, or do they just stand there and shake their head? No, it's not true. They're going to have to wait their turn. And that changes the dynamic in all these things, because what do we always seize on? It's those moments of friction.
And that is the theater, and that is about the impression. And if you remember, in that period in time back in 2020, Joe Biden was running on this argument of competence in the midst of chaos, restoring order. I mean, we didn't have a vaccine then. We were in the midst of this pandemic that had upended our lives. And that's what's so interesting about Anthony's polling about the economy and people remembering it fondly under Donald Trump, forgetting he was the one who shut down the economy because of what was happening. But I think in our polling, one of the things that's so interesting, Ed, is when we talk about the seriousness of the issues facing the country now, and we are only hearing the theater, we haven't heard, when you look at the polling, 75% of voters say Trump should explain his plans for the future. 69% say Biden should. That implies they haven't heard the affirmative argument for the future of the country.
We haven't heard from either of them.
Well, in fact, the studies have been done by even conservative-leaning economists that Trump's plan to expand tariffs would actually lead to an increase in inflation, correct? Yes. And so that is something that hasn't, that sort of sharp policy debate that I think that voters are craving. Wait a minute, I do want to know what their plan is for the future. How are they going to make my life better and my children's lives better? What are they going to do for me, the taxpayer?
And also, this goes back to, did you prepare for the debate or didn't you prepare for the debate? You can't riff your way through a presidency. You can't just wing it and be kind of in the moment when you're dealing with things like alliances that need to be tended when you have invasions happening. You can't just decide on your economic policy on the fly when you've got massive moving forces globally, also with the advent of artificial intelligence. You have to have a plan. You have to think things through. You have to anticipate. And all of that comes down to this stylistic difference between the two of them. So it is theater review, but it attaches to a crucial thing about the presidency, which is that it is a job that you cannot just improvise your way through.
Don't you find it hard to believe that he's done no preparation? I mean, I know he says that he's prepared for this his whole life when he goes out on rallies, but this is such a big moment for both of them. Because the research, I know Margaret and Nora are like, yeah, I can kind of believe that.
What in his previous behavior would lead you to believe that he's cracking the books?
Because I just think that this is different. There is so much at stake for both of them. There always is. But in this particular case, Joe Biden has to bring it to show, look, that I'm physically capable of doing this. Donald Trump has to show that I can be, quote, presidential, that I can, quote, behave. Well, he can do that.
Yeah.
They both have something to prove to the audience tonight.
We're going to find out in less than 25 minutes.
And I can't wait.
I know, exactly. And when we come back, we're going to talk about these key battleground states, how each campaign thinks they can achieve victory in the race to 270 electoral votes. Remember, that's what it's about, these 7 battleground states. We'll talk about it. You're watching CBS News.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Okay, let's go.
You guys good?
Hey.
All right, we good?
Keep going.
The clock, it's ticking.
Off we go.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
60 minutes.
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education. Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News Streaming.
Welcome to America Decides, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome back to Debate Night coverage here on CBS. We are just moments away from that debate, and we're learning President Biden has just arrived at the debate site. After the debate, President Biden is going to head to North Carolina for a rally tomorrow. North Carolina is one of 7 states where this election will be decided. Now, of those 7 states, Joe Biden won 6 of them in the last election. The one state that he did not win was North Carolina, right, Major Garrett? But I know you're going to break it down for us because I am so obsessed with these 7 states.
Exactly. Good evening, Nora. Good evening, everyone. I know it feels a little early to bring back our old friend, the Electoral College map, but look, we have a presidential debate in June, so it gets early around here with the campaign 2024. So, stop me if you've heard this before. Who wins this election is going to come down to 7 battleground states. Nora just referred to them. What are they? Let's go through them once again. Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and as Nora just mentioned, North Carolina, as well as Georgia. Now, in 2020, Biden won 6 of those states. So we asked each campaign, what do they think is the easiest path for them to achieve victory? Let's first start with the incumbent President Biden. Now, if he wins all the lean and likely Democratic states on our friend the map, he just needs to win the states the campaign affectionately calls the blue wall. That's Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. The president would also again need to pick up the one electoral vote from Nebraska's 2nd congressional district. That would put him at exactly 270 electoral votes. We all know that's the magic number. Now let's flip to the Trump side of the equation. If he wins all the lean and likely Republican states he won 4 years ago, the campaign feels their clearest path to victory: hold North Carolina, which he won in 2020, and then flip battleground states Georgia and Pennsylvania. That would bring Trump right to 270. Of course, we all know the easiest path to victory is not always how elections play out, so here's at least one more scenario. Let's say Trump carries every state he won in 2020, along with the same electoral votes from Nebraska and Maine. That would put him at 235 electoral votes. If Trump wins the 3 states he lost in 2020 by less than 1%, that's Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia, he would have 272 electoral votes and be returned to the Oval Office. Nora and everyone, back to you.
All right, Major. Thank you. Gail?
Thank you, Major. We are joined now by CBS News political contributors, Democratic strategist Joel Payne and Republican strategist Terry Sullivan. Guys, good to see you both.
Hey there,
hello,
Gail.
hello. Hello. Joel, we're going to start with you. What do you think Biden needs to do tonight to win this debate?
Well, I think, Gail, there are 2 C's: contrast and consolidation. The president needs to focus on consolidating his base. It's something that Donald Trump has been able to do more effectively to this point. Joe Biden needs to focus on bringing home those core Democratic constituencies that have waned a bit in public opinion polls. And I think focusing on abortion, focusing on democracy, I think he'll hope to accomplish that, and accomplish that with contrast, showing that this is a race between 2 very different presidents with 2 very different visions of America. And I think if Joe Biden is able to put that forward, he and his campaign will feel very confident that they have a successful night tonight.
We'll see. You know, Terry, listen, Donald Trump could almost say the exact same thing. What does a win look like for him tonight?
You know, in my experience, Gail, of prepping candidates for these debates, is you've got both a strategic goal and a tactical goal. And the tactical goal is to have that viral breakout moment, that soundbite. And that's really important. Whatever the message is, that you have these moments that are concise and get played over and over again for days after the debate. Strategically, Trump needs to make this about the issues that voters care about and that he's leading on, like the economy, inflation, crime, the securing the border. Those are the issues that he's really, winning on at the moment, and that voters care about the most, and prosecute the case against Joe Biden for doing a poor job on those issues. And I think he can do that.
Terry, I think you're so right about a viral moment, because for people that don't watch the whole debate like we intend to do, what they rely on are those clips that they see on the news the very next day. Thank you both.
All right, ahead, we'll give you a sneak peek into how we plan to fact-check the candidates.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more. Experience thought-provoking.
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go, with the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
an original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to the Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
You're looking at Atlanta, and we are just minutes away from the first presidential debate. A lot will happen on the stage there, and our team here will fact-check what the candidates say. Chief Washington Correspondent Major Garrett is leading that effort. Major, I think it's going to be a busy night for you.
It's going to be a busy night. Look, the campaigns and the candidates will fact-check themselves. But we have a team of journalists that we have built here at CBS, not for just this debate, Nora, but for the entire campaign and for everything that falls into the disinformation, misinformation space. Forensic journalists, data journalists who will do this work 7 days a week from now until forever, basically. Tonight, we will unveil the CBS Confirmed team to take a look at the things that the campaigns and the candidates say tonight that most need a fact check. Either there's missing context or it's a complete falsehood. We will explain all of that and, not just tonight, but throughout this process with the CBS Confirmed team, show our work. How did we reach the conclusion to verify something is true or identify it as something false or something in between? We'll not only explain the verdict we've reached, but how we got there.
That's excellent. I think we're all looking forward to that. It's such an important element of what we do is fact-checking this. I also just think about having covered so many presidential contests, we usually have the candidates lay out big pieces of policy, like their tax plan or their health plan, or in the case of Trump, who has talked about a lot of things that he was going to unveil. It just hasn't happened. There's no big policy discussion.
Think about how much we used to talk about health care. I mean, in the Obama years. And it was a constant, and then in the Democratic primary, one of the things is that ideas weren't really debated in the Republican primary because the major candidate didn't participate. So we haven't had debate, policy debates have kind of died out over the last several cycles, but it really now is threadbare. And that's one of the challenges for the moderators tonight, which is to get them to do more than just give kind of a top line, but in fact articulate what and how their policies work.
And you got some pretty hefty. We've never seen anything like this before either. That's
because there are two presidents.
Yes, because there are two presidents, and because there seemed to be such dissatisfaction with both candidates on both sides. I also find that very fascinating, that both sides say, I'm not happy with my choices.
I think back to the debate that y'all moderated in early 2020. What was one of the biggest headlines coming out of that night?
Well, that was like herding cats. That was very difficult.
The big headline was Joe Biden made a policy pledge, right? Yes. I will nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court, and I will make that happen on my first choice. That was a new policy thing. It was a headline. It was something he could run on the rest of the time. What's to say one of them doesn't do that tonight and suggest something meaty and somewhat policy-driven that drives headlines?
Who might that be, Ed?
Who would propose that?
Yes.
I mean, either of them could do it.
No, who might that be that you think would create a headline? Because I think debates are about messaging and they're about moments. It's what Terry said. Somebody is going to try to make a moment, whether deliberately in a good way or inadvertently.
But we want
somebody wants a moment.
But we'll stay grounded and knowing that actually they're not defined by what they do in these 90 minutes. They have huge, long records.
Yes.
Promises made in the evening. We have a record against which we can check them, whether they're just blowing smoke or whether they've put together a team and a vision to execute that idea. Because these two candidates have been tested in the job and facing the reality that tonight might get into fantasy.
And how do you characterize each other's record? Each president has 4 years, nearly 4 years for Joe Biden, a full 4 years for President Trump. And if they wade into that and they mischaracterize that, we will be there to describe what is or isn't true.
What we see in our polling so often, though, is the short memories Americans have.
Sure.
And so it's not just fact-checking, it's reminding people that when they tried to recast Donald Trump as Ronald Reagan, peace through strength, well, actually, he tried to pull troops out of Germany, South Korea, and Japan. That it is not about America fighting wars now, as Donald Trump will say. America's not actively involved in wars. We're just in such a different information space, and I think that's what's fascinating about what you're doing here, Major, where we are not just fact-checking and elevating truth. We have to actively bring down untruth and tell you, no, this is wrong, this is why it's wrong, because that eco-space out there is spreading these untruths in ways, in outlets other than ours.
We are moments away from this debate. Let's get a quick check-in with Nancy Cordes and Robert Costa there in Atlanta. Nancy?
Nora, the president is going to want to talk about a range of issues tonight: reproductive rights, taxes, the economy. But first and foremost, he wants to make the case that Donald Trump is too dangerous to allow back into the Oval Office. He'll say he's now a convicted felon, that he inspired the January 6th insurrectionists, that he admires dictators, that he's under indictment here in Georgia in this very county, Fulton County. That is the overarching case that he's looking to make in the next 90 minutes.
Nancy Cordes, thank you. Robert Costa, you are there in the spin room as well. Final thoughts.
I just was speaking to some Trump campaign advisors, and they said this is all about former President Trump trying to win over those Nikki Haley Republicans. He's already got his base, but can his temperament tonight, his personality, his answers on really important policy issues, can it convince independents, traditional Republicans, those who have skepticism about him, to give him another shot, a full look? We'll see. 90 minutes, it's political war between these two.
Robert Costa, thank you very much. And, you know, I'm anxiously awaiting what's going to happen, because I do feel like this is going to be not only a clash of personality, but hopefully a clash of ideas about not only their own records, but what they'll do in the future.
And, you know, Nora, one of the things that comes back to me again and again is how serious the issues are that are facing the country right now. And that it has to be more than a tweet or a bumper sticker, and that we are excited there's a debate when that used to be the very basic expectation of what voters were required to hear, an actual cogent, you know, explanation of what someone was offering when they were arguing to be your commander-in-chief.
And when there's a bipartisan agreement on immigration about how to do that, where Democrats went the most conservative that they've ever gotten and pushed them there, and they still couldn't get a deal done.
Americans can steal this debate back from the political system and say, they didn't answer my questions, they didn't talk about what I want, and demand that from the candidates. They don't have to take what's being fed tonight.
All right. Thanks to all of you, and our coverage of the CNN presidential debate will continue momentarily here on CBS News 24/7 and on your local CBS station. Up next, the next and first presidential debate.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that? Why weren't